The night of August 6, 1943. The Solomon Sea. Hidden beneath the waves was a nearly 3,800-pound steel killer, carrying over 800 pounds of powerful Torpex explosive. Its target, the destroyer Shigure. A perfect shot. The moment of impact. But the expected, devastating explosion never came. The Battle of Vella Gulf is hailed as the US Navy's most perfect trap in the Pacific. An ambush that annihilated 3 Japanese destroyers in a few horrific minutes. But that story often omits the strangest event of the night. This is the story of the 4th ship, of the legendary captain who escaped hell, and of the technical failure that saved his life. To understand this extraordinary survival, we must understand the man on the bridge, Captain Tameichi Hara. In a military culture often obsessed with blind aggression and the search for a glorious death, Hara was an anomaly. He was not a fanatic. He was a thinker, a cold and practical tactician. He was the only man in the history of the Imperial Navy to be both a combat-seasoned skipper and the author of the Navy's official torpedo attack manual. Hara was the master of the most feared weapon in the Pacific, the Type 93 Long Lance torpedo. Longer range, higher speed, and a bigger punch than anything the Allies had. Hara understood its power better than anyone. After the war, his memoirs stunned readers with their fairness, never hesitating to praise his enemies and criticize his own side's mistakes. Hara was a true professional soldier, and his ship was no less special, the destroyer Shigure, literally autumn rain. In the Imperial Navy, where warships often had short and tragic lives, the Shigure had achieved a near mythical status. It was known as the Lucky Ship. It had fought in the Java Sea. It was at Midway. It had survived the bloody Guadalcanal campaign. Time and again, as sister ships sank around it, the Shigure always seemed to find a way to escape by a hair's breadth, almost unscathed. The combination of a master captain and a legendary ship made for a formidable duo. The Solomon Islands campaign was a brutal war of attrition. To supply isolated garrisons like Kolombangara, Japan relied on the Tokyo Express, high-speed transport runs under the cover of darkness. These were dangerous missions, but the Japanese were confident in their abilities. For a full year, they had owned the night. They had the world's best binoculars and an absolute faith in the naked eye. They believed no technology could replace seasoned experience. The US Navy had learned costly lessons, repeatedly outmaneuvered when the sun went down. However, that dominance was based on a flawed assumption. The Americans had developed a secret weapon that would strip away the advantage of the dark: advanced centimetric radar. The night of August 6th, another Tokyo Express mission. 4 destroyers carrying 900 troops and 50 tons of supplies steamed into Vella Gulf. For Hara, this was a routine mission. The Shigure took the final position in the formation. The weather that night was poor. Sudden rain squalls reduced visibility to near zero. Ideal conditions to conceal an express run. But this time was different. Hiding in the darkness of Kolombangara Island, 6 American destroyers were waiting. Guided by radar and a completely new doctrine under Commander Frederick Moosbrugger, the Americans had laid a perfect trap. Captain Hara had no idea he was being watched. He was steaming into one of the most devastating naval ambushes in history. 23 hours. The American Electric Eye had a firm lock on its targets, over 12 miles away. While Hara and his officers were still straining their eyes against a black wall of rain, Commander Moosbrugger was quietly maneuvering his forces. They held the single most important advantage: information. Task Group 31.2 had achieved a textbook-perfect torpedo attack position, a position every naval admiral dreamed of. 23:41 hours. The order was given. 24 Mark 15 torpedoes plunged into the water. Not a single warning shot was fired. A completely silent attack. For the next 4 minutes, death raced toward the unsuspecting Japanese column. Only seconds before impact did lookouts on the lead ship, Hagikaze, spot the ghostly wakes. It was too late. The first torpedo struck the Hagikaze with annihilating force. The horrific explosion turned night into day. From his position at the rear of the column, Hara watched in horror. Instant chaos erupted. The Japanese captains tried to react to an enemy they could not see. Before they could orient themselves, another spread of torpedoes found its mark. Both the Arashi and the Kawakaze were hit in quick succession. Secondary explosions from their magazines finished them off. In a matter of minutes, 3 of the Imperial Navy's 4 elite destroyers had been turned into burning hulks of scrap metal. This was the ultimate test for Hara. The mission had failed. Now, the battle was purely for survival. Amidst the scene of destruction, the instincts of a master tactician took over. His rear position had bought him precious seconds. Hara did not panic. He acted. He ordered a hard turn to starboard, accelerating to full speed. The Shigure roared, her hull shuddering violently as she executed the emergency maneuver. It was a masterclass in ship handling. Hara was attempting to comb the torpedoes, running parallel to them to minimize his target profile. The American torpedoes kept from some past, just yards from the hull. The lucky ship seemed to be dancing with death. In the midst of the chaos, Hara still attempted to strike back. He ordered a spread of 8 long lance torpedoes, launched in the direction of the presumed enemy. A desperate act, but one that showed his uncompromising fighting spirit. No matter how skilled Hara was, probability eventually caught up with him. The torpedo found its way. It was headed straight for the most vulnerable part, the rudder. Impact. The ship shook violently. Everyone on board knew what came next. The explosion that would tear off the stern and finish the Shigure. They braced for death. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Nothing happened. The torpedo had slammed through the ship's rudder.
But by a miracle of probability, or a catastrophic failure of technology, it had failed to detonate.
In a brutal irony of fate, the Americans' own weapon had betrayed them. The Mark 15 torpedo was notorious for its poor reliability. Tonight, that failure became the Shigure's savior. But the danger was not over. The 2nd American Division was closing in. It was their turn to open fire with their guns. The American 5-inch guns rained a torrent of shells on the dying Japanese ships and on the fleeing Shigure. It was then that Hara noticed something was wrong. The helmsman reported the rudder was responding very sluggishly. The ship had been wounded by the impact. With a damaged ship, Hara ordered a smokescreen and continued to zigzag, trying to throw off the enemy gunners. Taking advantage of the American destroyers being preoccupied with shelling his sinking comrades and concealed by smoke and rain, Hara guided his wounded ship into the darkness. As the Shigure escaped Vella Gulf, the last of the gunfire fell silent. It had done the impossible. Behind it was a scene of horror. Over 1,500 of his comrades were dead or dying. The mission was a catastrophic failure. But the lucky ship, Shigure, had once again lived up to her name. They were the only ones to return from hell. As the first light of August 7th broke over Vella Gulf, the scale of the disaster was exposed.
Vella Gulf had become a massive graveyard. For the Americans, it was a flawless victory. Not a single casualty, not a single scratch. A stunning shift in the balance of power in night combat. For the Japanese, the cost was horrific. 3 elite destroyers and over 1,500 lives had vanished in a matter of minutes. The Shigure limped back to its base in Rabaul, alone. Captain Hara had saved his ship, but the weight of survival and the humiliation of defeat bore down on him. He still did not understand why they had survived. For months afterward, the Shigure continued to fight. Its rudder had remained sluggish since that fateful night, but in the urgency of war, no one had time for a thorough investigation. Not until November 1943, 3 months after the battle, the ship was finally put into dry dock for a full overhaul. As the water receded, the engineers gathered at the stern. What they found left them all speechless. Passing clean through the thick steel plate of the rudder was a perfect 2-foot-wide hole. The unmistakable signature of an unexploded American torpedo. If it had detonated, the Shigure would have been crippled and quickly destroyed.
The ship's fate had been decided by a faulty detonator. When the engineers asked how they could have possibly handled the ship in this condition, Hara's reply became legendary for its cool understatement. The helm has been sluggish these past few months, but we've run a dozen missions since then, and managed. Hara's incredible luck was, in fact, the flip side of one of America's biggest military technology scandals of World War II. For the first 2 years of the war, the Mark 15 torpedo was the bane of American sailors. They were notorious for their abysmal reliability. They often ran deeper than set. Their complex magnetic exploders frequently malfunctioned. And, most alarmingly, even the backup contact exploder had a critical design flaw in its firing pin. Despite countless reports from the front lines of failure rates as high as 70%, The U.S. Navy's Bureau of Ordnance stubbornly denied the problem for months, blaming the crews instead of their equipment. At Vella Gulf, Hara's skill put him in a position to survive, but it was his enemy's technological failure that was the deciding factor. The Lucky ship continued to live up to its name for a long time, surviving numerous other major battles and cementing its legendary status. But luck does not last forever. In January 1945, the Shigure was finally sunk. This time, an American torpedo, now significantly improved, worked exactly as designed. Captain Hara, however, had been transferred before then. His personal luck held.
He survived even when his final command, the cruiser Yahagi, was sunk from under him during the suicide mission alongside the battleship Yamato. After the war, Hara wrote his memoirs, providing an insightful, fair, and deeply human look at the war from the Japanese side, a legacy that outlasted any warship. The Battle of Vella Gulf was an American tactical masterpiece, but it is also a story of extraordinary Japanese survival. It reminds us that in the chaos of war, the line between skill, failed technology, and pure luck is sometimes impossibly thin. The story of Tameichi Hara raises a fascinating question. What matters more in war, superior skill or sheer luck? And what are your thoughts on the infamous reliability of the Mark 15 torpedo? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these multifaceted military histories, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next video.